Hey y'all, Andrew Reed, Mossy Creek Mushrooms. And, well, I was thinking that for now, since we've got a lot of new people coming on to the channel, we should just do a grow room overview, because things have changed a little bit for me and the way we run the grow room since, what was it? Last time I did a grow room overview video was May of 2018, so I'll put the link for that down below. But just so you know, things have changed since I was in the basement. And I know I had the grow room management video, but that was really about our scheduling and how we handle everything and how we, as the overseers, right, go through and actually try to curate our time for the mushrooms. This, I want to just go back and I want to talk technicalities a little again in a broad sense. Now, there are 5 elements to a grow room, in my opinion. We'll say you have, for a mushroom grow room in particular, I guess, you have your fresh air. So what I would say is this covers a number of things. We'll go into that in a second. The second thing is humidity. Third is lighting. Fourth is temperature. And the fifth would be your space utilization, the actual physical space, where your organisms exist. Those 5 things are really what you need to concern yourself with in the grow room. The mushrooms will tell you what they're getting enough of and what they're getting too much of, and what they're just, they'll let you know. They'll talk to you, and they talk to you basically just, it's more sign language than verbal, I hope for most of you anyways. But let's go into the first one real quick, which is fresh air. And I like this a lot. Now, fresh air means a number of things, and the simplest way to put it is that you want to reduce your CO2 levels and increase your oxygen levels. This encourages oyster mushrooms, and they are in particular heavy feeders of oxygen, and they will get stimmy, which will lower their quality much easier. So, and that's what I really mean by they're sensitive to higher amounts of CO2, to needing, they're hungry feeders for oxygen. It means that you're not going to get the most ideal oyster mushrooms if you're not giving them more air. And this is because they get stimmy. So if they get stimmy, turn your air up. That's my solution to everything, right? Now, we can talk a little bit about specifics because shortages have happened, right? Things are not what they once were. So the fans that I used to use, the 8-inch fans, have changed. We now use an 8-inch fan that's 735 cubic meters, cubic feet per minute. Cubic feet per minute, not cubic meters. You see what I am like at the end of the day. Pretty much just brain blown out. So 735 cubic feet per minute means that that's how much air we're replacing at the fan running full speed every minute. So that fan is moving 735 cubic feet of air per minute while it's running. I leave my fans on 24/7. Nowadays, we just leave them running full power. So that is what I'm running in a room that is, well, you know what? I can't do this with a camera in my face and in my head, so I'm going to use a calculator. But my rooms are 20 feet by 12 by 8, meaning that I am at 1,920 cubic feet per grow room. The 2 grow rooms that we've got going right this moment are each running fans that are running at 735 cubic feet per minute, meaning that I fully replace the air in my grow room every 2.6 minutes. So it's a lot of air movement in that entire room. Now, this is also important for another reason, and a lot of people don't really realize this, and I certainly didn't back in 2018 when I was making this video. Mushrooms are sensitive, oyster mushrooms at least, and I don't know how. I don't know the system that they use to go about sensing this, but oyster mushrooms are sensitive to the bioload in the air. They can sense if there's a ton of mold spores and bacterial endospores and things like that, and even other mushroom spores. And when there's a huge bioload in the air, it's almost as if the mushrooms go, everything's fruiting right now. Everything's out there. It's kind of dangerous for my babies. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hold back. I'm still going to produce, but my yields are going to be low. I first noticed this with gravel floors. A lot of people have gravel floors in their grow rooms. I don't like this. For the first year or two, it might be okay. But as you go on, every person I've ever seen with a gravel floor, no matter how heavily they lime it, to try to kill anything that's in there, you have oyster mushroom spores, little bits of mushrooms, bugs, etc., falling into that gravel, beginning to rot. That is a feeding frenzy ground for bacteria and mold, which then will increase the bioload in your grow room just tremendously. And your mushrooms will continue to lower their yield over time. And I've seen this. People are like, they first have a really great grow room where they're growing 2-3 pound first flushes, right? And then by the end of the year, they're getting like 1.2 pounds, that kind of stuff. A lot of times that can mean your bioload is heavy. If you're fresh air and everything else is taken care of, the bioload in your room may be keeping your mushrooms from, really popping. They may be trying to hold more in reserve than what they need to be. So, or than what you would like for them to be. I feel like they might need to be, but... So our fans, as far as fresh air is concerned, our fans are now in the outside of our grow room. We put them on the top of the grow room where they are easy to change. You just go up on the catwalk, you walk up there. My 15-year-old son does it most of the time. He just gets up there and he just pops them right off, drops the new fan in, puts the vent back on it and screws it back tight, and then turns the fan back on. Takes no time whatsoever. Those 2 dirty fans go out to be cleaned on the back dock. They get pressure washed and then set to dry for a week or more. And then we change our fans out every single week. So, if you've only got 2 fans and 2 backups, then you would have to do it every week. But you want to make sure those things are absolutely dry before you plug them back in. That's really it for fresh air for me, man. It's just really simple. A lot of people get CO2 meters. I have a CO2 meter. I just picked it up from another farm. I didn't really need it or want it, but I do use it occasionally now just out of curiosity. For instance, here in our valley, our native CO2 level is about 600 parts per million, and I'd like to keep my oyster mushrooms below 14 to 1500 parts per million. That's whenever I've noticed the most extensive stimminess that happens. Now, our grow room near the end of the fan comes out to about 1,100 CFM. Parts per million. And by the time we get to where the fan outlet is, so if I'm at the entrance of the grow room, my CO2 levels are about 600 parts per million. By the time I get down to my fan, they're about 1,100 parts per million. So almost double what they are from the time it's gone into the grow room. So that grow room is still producing a lot of CO2. Now, along with this, back whenever I was running my op in the basement, I had my incubation air feeding into my grow room, which means I already had heavy CO2 air. I don't have that issue now. I'll happily show you. This is something I really learned with the basement, even though we use what's called a preconditioning room. That is what is very commonly used in mushroom culture now, especially if you're creating negative air pressure in your grow rooms, which is what we still use. We use negative air pressure because we're pulling air out of the room and putting it out a window, which means that air is allowed to flow through our preconditioning room into the grow rooms. In the preconditioning room is where we have the outlets to our air conditioning. It is where fresh air gets dumped in from our mini split. From our mini split, but also from our HRV. The HRV system pulls air out of incubation, dumps it out in the warehouse, but manages to run fresh air through a radiator, fins, to recapture energy so that if we're cooling incubation, we get to recapture some of that cool air and then dump it into our preconditioning room. That then gets drawn into, so that's now fresh and cool, and that we actively cooled only one room, but now we're getting to reuse that colder air, meaning we get to use it twice. And then we're going to have a big HRV on the end of the grow rooms, which I'm really excited about. Once we get that set up, and once that gets set up, now we're going to be getting to reuse that air a third time. So, so I'm really stoked on that. Now, the preconditioning room for this is where all of our, as far as fresh air is concerned, that's where all of our fresh air is coming in from. But we'll get into humidity and temperature here in a little bit, which also, has its homemade kind of in that preconditioning space. But that's really, now that you understand the flow of how things go, air comes out of the grow room, and it's almost like everything works backwards because it gets taken out of the grow room first, and then everything gets to follow in. Now, as far as temperature, we'll go into that next. Even though, from what I've seen, most people seem to understand temperature pretty well. I like to keep my room at 65 degrees Fahrenheit. It allows me to grow the widest variety of mushrooms that I can possibly grow. That includes king oysters. That includes the warm weather enoki. That includes chestnuts and oysters and even shiitake. So 65 has been really nice to us. I like to keep our incubation space around 75. Now, that means that I do like for my preconditioning room to be a little bit cooler. I have 2 window units in there that are pushing cold air, and we're about to have our 7-ton unit hooked up. And we have our mini split, which is 4.5 tons, I think, is what Ben said. I could be wrong on the mini split. I reserve the right to be incorrect about my own op. So, as far as temperature goes, like how to achieve this, beyond telling you that you want your air conditioning not in your grow room and you want it in your preconditioning space, I don't have a lot to offer just because HVAC is my weakest point. So I hire professionals when it comes to HVAC, or Ben and I kind of figure it out on certain things, but I would much rather hire someone to tell me what to do with HVAC than run the risk of doing it wrong. So we're moving a lot of fresh air. We got to treat a lot of air. Electric bill is going to be huge on that end, but it's worth it because you get a wide range of mushrooms all year long. Now, I will say, I try to keep my room at 65 degrees Fahrenheit, but since we moved to the warehouse, that's been impossible so far. We're going to have, it's better now with the mini split. We didn't get the mini split installed until like the last hot month of last year. And so it's been warming the space for us now, but it is much less powerful at warming than it is cooling. So, we've had things too cool this winter and too hot last summer. And we were able to work with things by, playing with strains, growing mother of pearl and Elmsey and things through the summertime and going down to just 2 or 3 mushrooms and then building our diversity back up as we go through the cool. But hopefully by the time we get our 7-ton unit in and the big HRV, we won't have to do that anymore. And we will basically just be able to grow what we want all year at a reasonable cost because those HRVs help us reuse that energy. Now, beyond my weakness, I'd like to go into what I actually consider one of my strengths, which is humidity. A lot of people have issues with the House of Hydro sonic humidifiers. I will say that the code Mossy works there again now, and it will knock 1 penny off your sale is what my understanding is. But it does get you about $50 worth of extra discs. So, $50.01 doesn't sound like that bad for putting in a code. I will say, in all honesty, all frankness, all openness, all whatever, that I get about like a 10% kickback on that. So there is a financial reason for me wanting to push them, but beyond that, you can see it in my footage. I still use sonic humidifiers. The 2 that I have in the grow rooms right now have been active for almost 2 years. There is a learning curve. Most people burn out their first unit or 2. They don't understand how to use these things. Almost every time I've seen someone have really terrible luck with the ultrasonics, it's because they don't know how to use them. And they're unwilling to go through the learning period to get the superior fog. The ultrasonics are just superior in almost every way. We chose that fog for a reason. Oyster mushrooms in particular, but mushrooms in general, can uptake a certain micron size water particle straight out of the air. The whole idea of mushrooms growing in fog, that's not unfounded. Mushrooms can literally take up humidity if it's a certain micron size, which is those sonics put out that size micron and smaller of humidity particle, so water particle. They're just far superior. They're easier to pipe around. You'll see that I have two different styles of humidifiers now. The one that you are more familiar with the tub and I have a UV light in it now, has the elevator and the fan blowing air into the box and everything. And then we have another humidifier in our second room, which is just an open tub. And we did this because we were actually planning on hanging it from the ceiling, but then ended up having an issue that we were like, we'll just put it on the floor for now. And it's worked so well that, it's easy to clean. It's a clear tub, can't put UV in it or anything, but we just clean it once a week. And it's literally just got a fan blowing air down. And you'll see that room actually gets far foggier than my room with the elevator. And I think that the open top humidifiers might be what we're moving to with the Sonics, because it just puts that mist in the room so thick, so quick that I think there's something about the way I'm guessing there's a lot of condensate in that elevator in the first humidifier, and we're losing a lot of the fog just from trying to move it up like that. So, if we can kick it out in the open air much sooner, then it has a chance to evaporate into the air and raise the humidity, the true relative humidity. So, I think that's the way we're going to go with that. I will say, if you're going to go with the closed style, the UV bulb is wonderful. It can help you really prolong periods of cleaning. That said, I wouldn't prolong too long. Even though I think that we could probably go a month without cleaning our first humidifier, we'd still do it every other week. And every week that we have a mentorship here, which is almost every week. So it really gets cleaned almost every week, even though we have it scheduled for every other week. But when we do our mentorship, we show people how we do everything. So we actually do way extra work when we have a mentorship in, just to show them, here's how we break apart everything. Here's how we do everything, whether we need it or not. There was a time when we had hundreds of Petri dishes stacked up just because we've had so many mentorships come in and pour agar that we just kept stacking dishes and we weren't using them that fast. So going back to the humidity, though, I really think that the UV bulb and the closed humidifier, it's a good way to go if you can schedule things and you can keep yourself from being lazy. Otherwise, just clean it every week, which is what we do with the open top one. I have a really bad problem about keeping up with things week to week, which is why I have so many staff members that are so wonderful and the opposite of me. They are reliable people, and that is what I needed. It takes about 5 reliable people to make up for the unreliability of Andrew. So I don't even have to schedule these things. They just know that they happen every week, and they just do the job, and they do it well. So there's another thing, I guess, about grow rooms that I wasn't planning on cover. Find yourself some good, reliable people. Because us mushroom people, sometimes we tend to be a bit ADHD. You know what I mean? I think you know what I mean. Now, lighting. Lighting's super simple. I don't feel like there's much need to go into it a lot. I will explain my reasonings on why I do what I do. There are other ways to do it. You can use the purple UFO LEDs if you want. Mushrooms do respond to those. However, you guys are familiar with my T5s, the T5 fluorescents I've been using. We are still using those in the first grow room. We are about to get rid of those. We now use LEDs that are still T5. That's a Barina brand. Now, let's see, where is it? Yeah, it's Barina, but they're still 6500K. I've explained this before as 6500K is perfect for the mushrooms, and it is. Like, I get really good colors. You guys have seen the colors in my videos. You've seen previous stuff. We don't have to worry about that. The beautiful coloration is a combination of temperature and your lighting, right? Because it's color is actually, it's like human beings. Mushrooms have melanin, and the more light, the more melanin they produce. The more melanin they produce, the more color they have. The lower the temperatures, the slower the metabolism, the less chance there is for the melanin to get stretched out and diluted in that same lighting condition, whereas if things are growing much quicker, the mushrooms will stretch out and grow and dilute their melanin, which is why a lot of mushrooms fade as they get older. Now, mushrooms at 6,500 Kelvin, the light spectrum, mushrooms do respond to the more blue side. This is kind of considered a full spectrum bulb. And let me tell you why it's important. If you're selling at farmers markets, restaurants, online, it doesn't matter. Wherever you're selling, pictures sell, video sells. So 6,500 Kelvin is about the perfect temperature for taking photography or videography with. And that's going to help you sell. If you've got those purple LEDs, I knew people that had a farm in Georgia that had these purple LED spaceship lights. And the only time they could take pictures of their mushrooms were, I guess, if they turned those lights off and came and brought a flashlight in, or if they took the mushrooms outside. And that's generally how I saw pictures from their farm, was that they took mushrooms outside, blocks or whatever, and to take the photos and then bring them back in. And that just, no, you guys have seen that. We got those nice shots from above the mushrooms, under the mushrooms, to the side, etc. And our lighting is, I don't have to really do much white balance or anything with photography. Even if you're working with a cell phone, it's just 6,500 Kelvin, that phone knows what to do, bam, you've got it. It's just much simpler, and it helps you sell stuff. Now, which is the point of growing mushrooms if you're growing them for profit. Of course, if you've got, if you're just doing a small grow room for yourself, you can afford to do whatever you want with it. But if you're wanting to share it with your friends and show how cool the stuff you're doing is, honestly, the purple LEDs might be kind of cool in a Martha tent, because that'd make for some interesting photos. So keep in mind whatever you're wanting to do. But I like the Barina. I'll put this link down below as well as the fan that I use currently as well. Now, so we've done temperature. So really the last thing we're on is space utilization. Trying not to hurry and slur my words. Like the southerner I am. So this is still incredibly important, but and this is why we went with the types of shelving that you've seen in previous videos of the wood and the PVC. That's why we created that type of shelving. We call it clinker built. That type of grow room, it's just easy to throw up and throw down, just kind of like Vikings did long ships. Those long ships are called clinker builts. And the reason why we did that was just because we can buy materials from anywhere we land, right? Anywhere we're producing an op, and just, bam, throw those materials up, and we have a functional grow room that's adaptable for very cheap. Now, that being said, if you have the money for it, the rolling shelves are the way to go, for sure. I don't think that they need to be a full part of the process like some people do. Like some people just want to be able to roll those into a room and cook them down. And that actually would be great if we could. But from what I've seen, I'm trying to remember who it was that I saw way back in the day. James and Amy Fox. They were doing this, and I think they had some issues with the wheels warping under the heat expansion, cold, not condensing, but shrinking. I think they ended up having a lot of problems with their shelves that way. So we never went that way. We just continued to cook in the trough like we currently do. When the blocks come out of the trough, they go straight on those rolling shelves. They go into the lab. From there, they are taken off the shelf, inoculated, sealed, shaken, placed on another rolling shelf, to which they go into incubation, stay there. They then get moved out into the preconditioning room, where we then cut the bags open and then place them, just leave them on the shelf, but place that shelf into our second grow room. And our third grow room will be the same. I like this style. It's definitely more expensive, since your entire shelving in your op needs to be mobile to do this. But it reduces your labor drastically and the amount of times you're handling blocks drastically, which more than makes up for the money. Even if you're paying $200 per shelf, that one shelf will quickly pay itself off just in not having to use a cart to shelf, de-shelf, shelf, de-shelf, shelf, de-shelf, multiple times. So rolling carts are definitely the way to go. Plus, I found that in a same size area, for some reason, I can fit almost 100 more blocks in on rolling shelves. And I'll tell you why. if I've got 2 shelves sitting here and the mushrooms are growing in, and I needed to pick that because they're stable shelves, I would need to calculate out the width of my shoulder and the width of this big old belly to get between mushrooms without breaking them, and I would have to leave that room open. But with the shelving, the rolling shelving, you can do high density shelving. I can literally put 2 racks next to each other. The mushrooms can grow till they're almost touching. And then as long as I'm careful about how I take those shelves in and out, I can get a lot more blocks in. It makes a lot of sense. That said, it's not, if you're doing a really small op, I wouldn't worry about it. If you are cash constrained, I would not worry about it. You will definitely get more return building more stable shelving than wiping out your cash reserves on rolling shelves. You guys got to keep the cash reserves. It's kind of like fat reserves in wintertime, right? If anything happens, you can keep paying yourself. So don't overextend yourself into rolling shelving is what I'm saying. But if you can afford it, do it. And then as far as that goes, there's not really the cleaning schedule, I guess, with the rolling shelves. I should mention that since the cleanliness is next on my list because it's always the surprised 6th part of a grow room. But if we want, so we can roll all of our shelves to one side and clean all of that area, deep clean it, roll the shelves to the other side, deep clean that area. When blocks go out, we don't have to take them off and put them into a wheelbarrow or a cart or anything. We just roll the shelves out to the back dock, throw the blocks off into a trailer, dumpster, pickup truck, whatever's out there, whoever's come to collect blocks from us. You just throw them right off the shelf into that receptacle, and then you hose down with a pressure washer your shelves and then leave them out to sun dry. And the great thing about being sun dried is they're also UV cleaned at the same time they're being sun dried. So, and then you bring them in for lab use. So, and as far as cleanliness goes, cleanliness is the 6th part of having a grow room. Clean, clean, clean. When you pick mushrooms, clean all the excess off a block. When you take blocks off a shelf, clean the shelf. When you take an aisleway out, clean that aisleway. And then every week, do a good deep clean everywhere that you can reach. Clean your humidifiers, clean your vents, clean everything. Cleanliness is, what do they say? Cleanliness is akin to godliness. With mushrooms, yeah, absolutely. Mushrooms are sensitive to that bioload, so keep that bioload down by cleaning. It's about as simple as that. So really, guys, after the cleanliness factor, there's really not much more to the grow room. You guys you have an understanding now of how it should work. It can seem very daunting, very complicated. It's really not. Just break it down into pieces, eat that whale one bite at a time, and, start small and then work your way big. A smaller grow room is going to teach you a lot about running a grow room. So like a Martha tent, if you're just getting into this, the smaller an environment, the harder it is to stabilize that environment. And the larger an environment is, the easier it is to stabilize that environment. So run with your small environment, have a hard time stabilizing it, learn like that. Don't get discouraged. You're gonna mess up. Don't get discouraged at all. In fact, build that into your plan. Build messing up into your plan. It is cheaper than a college education. Trust me, losing a few blocks is way cheaper than a college education and will teach you a lot about how to run one of these grow rooms. Then you build a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one, and it gets easier every single time that you do this. It gets easier to build those grow rooms out. Man, it looks like I had a camera flash or something on there. But really, guys, that's it. If you have any questions about grow rooms, put them down below. If you have any experience with grow rooms, put them down below. If I am just completely off my rocker, please let me know. And as always, y'all, keep spawning culture.